Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in again to TowerGate. It is day 187, September the 8th, 2015. Fun Friday! Yes, and is there anything more fun than reading down the day's events and breaking news? Is it in regarding to TowerGate and all the stories that are a part of that? We have wiretapping, surveillance, emails, obstruction of justice, meetings on the tarmac. We have the Imran Awan and Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz. There are just so many stories that make up the overall TowerGate library of content that we delve into here on a daily basis that you just don't want to get away from it, do you? I could talk about funny things, but nah, we'd much rather stay on the stories, wouldn't we? I know that you would. So let's go ahead and get started with TowerGate Day 187. Fun Friday. First, Steve Bannon, in an interview with Charlie Rose, tells Charlie Rose that Twitch McConnell demanded that Trump stop the drain the swamp talk. McConnell doesn't like the drain the swamp. You'd think that's maybe because he knows he's one of the biggest monsters in the swamp. And then when Trump talks about draining the swamp, he's talking about Twitch and his good buddy Paul Big Ears Ryan. That's exactly why. Well, apparently the president didn't take too highly of that suggestion and probably told McConnell to shove it. Draining the swamp is a very popular phrase. It's something that needs to be done, and I'm sure that that's exactly what President Trump told Twitch. And my guess is it was that phone call, apparently, where things went south. And from that point on, Twitch McConnell and the president haven't been on very good terms. Well, what do you expect? If you're a horribly corrupt, do-nothing, failed Senate Majority Leader and you call the president, who's 5 times more popular than you are, whose agenda just led to a big Republican victory, not just for Trump, but for a lot of other Republicans who rode his coattails. He has all that success, and then he has a loser like McConnell call him on the phone and say, hey, stop talking about draining the swamp. This just shows you that McConnell is completely out of touch. Twitch doesn't know what the hell is going on. Probably he lives in a bubble like many other people of his circumstances. But it's very interesting that Steve Bannon would tell Charlie Rose about this phone call between Trump and Twitch McConnell, and the fact that Twitch McConnell, told Trump to stop talking about draining the swamp. That's very, very interesting. And it probably explains a lot of why Trump and McConnell have this rift. There's a lot of other reasons on the peripheral, but certainly a conversation like that, you can be sure that knowing how Trump is, he's not someone who would back down or what have you. And I guess Twitch McConnell is used to being able to throwing his weight around, and he finally met his match. He met someone who probably told him to shove it. And this is why I think that Twitch is determined to do everything he can to deprive Trump of a successful legislative agenda and a successful presidency. But it's backfiring badly on Twitch, very, very badly. The only reason he's not in fear of being tossed out is because he's not up for re-election. But he has about 3.5 months until the Christmas break. If he is ineffective in getting legislation passed through the Congress in the next 3.5 months as he was in the past 3.5 months, he may just find himself being tossed anyway just from the pressure from Republican voters who call their senators and say, hey, McConnell's got to go. And we've seen this happen many times throughout history, where public pressure has forced the resignation of a powerful leader in one of the 2 houses of Congress. So stay tuned to this channel, and we'll keep following this. But, another thing that I've mentioned before, I'll mention again, is that, the Obamacare, the way it was set up, the real nasty stuff hits in 2018. It was done purposely that way so Obama would be out of office. So as bad as it has been for Obamacare, it's going to be much worse in 2018. The penalties double. The premiums are expected to rise by 30%. You could see places where exchanges are barely existing may go away altogether. We could have a real crisis. I mean, a real complete meltdown of Obamacare. And it's now going to be in the Republicans' court, and not Trump, but the Republicans in Congress. You see, when Obama and the Democrats shoved that down our throats, they owned it. But since the Republicans have both houses of Congress and they've actually taken the ball, and now they're running with the ball, it's now pretty much on them. Now they pretty much kind of own it. Trump doesn't own it. It's you can either say that the Democrats and Obama own it, or the Republican Congress owns it, however you choose to look at it. But I think that the way the voters are going to look at it now is they're going to start blaming Republicans more than Democrats, because Republicans control both houses of Congress. They understand the precarious situation that we are in with Obamacare. They understand what is coming in the year 2018, and all this stuff is going to be hitting just as these guys are out campaigning for re-election. So Twitch McConnell and Big Ears Ryan and Mr. McCarthy, they may think, because they listen to all the Inside the Beltway writers and they watch CNN and MSNBC, and they believe what they see and what they hear from inside the Beltway. They have no idea what's going on in the country. They may think that their little plot is going to somehow harm Trump and help them. They are very, very wrong. Let's just put it that way. It is not going to work out that way. Believe me, it is not going to work out that way. Okay, let's move on. Well, let's see. It appears now that we're hearing talk, not just talk, but this is actually people within the Freedom Caucus in the Republican Party who are speaking with some journalists off the record, who are talking now that the Speaker of the House, Paul Eddie Munster Ryan, with big ears, Speaker of the House, is in big trouble because they are quietly working behind the scenes with Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows leading the charge. They're working behind the scenes to oust Speaker Eddie Munster Ryan. Now, this was attempted before when he was actually wanting to be confirmed as the Speaker. They did mount a challenge to him back then, but they couldn't find the support. But they're finding much more support now because we're coming up on an election year. And a lot of Republicans, even though they may not be big Trump fans, they want to get reelected. And they're reading the tea leaves, and they realize that they've had a failed agenda in the House and the Senate. And a lot of people think it's time for a leadership change. He hasn't been around that long, but certainly long enough to muddy up the works and to do a miserable job. So Jim Jordan and Mark Meadows of the Freedom Caucus, along with some others, are working quietly behind the scenes. They're looking to oust Big Ears Ryan as Speaker of the House. And I certainly hope that he's defeated. I hope he's defeated in his race against Paul Nehlen in Wisconsin. It's very doable. It's very doable. And something else, that we don't talk much about here on TowerGate. I don't know if I've ever talked about it, but for those of you who don't know, Paul Ryan married into a very wealthy and powerful political family, a family of people who are lawyers and politicians. His wife, of course, his wife voted for Obama twice, and it's believed that she voted for the Rotten Reverend. So Paul Ryan married into a lot of money when he married his wife, who's a lawyer, and her family's all a bunch of lawyers, and they're all big-time Democrat political activists and donors. So Paul Ryan is married to a hardcore lefty, and he's married into a leftist family with a lot of money, which probably is how he was able to win his first election, probably financed with his wife's money. So a lot of people don't know that about Paul Ryan, but yes, that's why he is such a lefty. He's a fake conservative, a fake constitutionalist. He's not the real deal. He's just Eddie Munster with big ears, posing as Speaker of the House, failing miserably, and doing everything he can to get his ass thrown out of his position which is exactly what should happen. Very well done, Mr. Jordan and Mr. Meadows. And keep in mind, Jim Jordan is the representative in the district just north of me. Good man. Like Jim Jordan a lot. Alrighty, FBI Director Chris No Shit Sherlock Wray was speaking at a speech on Thursday, and he says that he has not detected a single whiff of interference into the ongoing investigation into Russian meddling in the 2016 election. He also praised President Trump for not getting involved in the probe. This is really the first that we've heard from FBI Director Chris No Shit Sherlock Wray. I keep trying to find things every day, and finally I was happy just to find that he made a speech. And it wasn't like a public speech. He was actually speaking to like government employees, I guess people in the FBI, whatever. It was kind of a inside the Beltway government speech. It wasn't like a public speech or anything like that. Don't even know if it was even broadcast live, but probably wasn't. This came out of True Pundit, story out of True Pundit. But anyway, the new FBI director has not detected a single whiff of interference into the ongoing investigation into Russian meddling in the election, and he praises President Trump for not getting involved in the probe. So I guess that's some positive we can take away. At least we know that he is alive and well and kicking. He's not on the golf course. He's actually doing something, and that's good. We'll keep watching to see if he actually will try to bring back and restore some degree of integrity to the FBI, which has now been completely destroyed. And this is a point that, that I've been trying to make with No Shit Sherlock Christopher Wray, the FBI director, is that, it's almost like they don't want to have these investigations because they're afraid it will do harm to the FBI or Justice Department or the executive branch. But the fact is, people already have such a very low opinion that actually, if we were to see the FBI director and the Department of Justice, head of Department of Justice, Jeff Sessions, if we were to see them actually prosecute these crimes, I think it would build credibility in those government agencies and restore some degree of confidence in them and bring back some of the integrity that they have lost nearly all their integrity. No one really believes that the Department of Justice is about justice, and no one really believes the FBI is about investigating real crime anymore. It's just turned into two political branches of the executive branch, and that's what needs to change. And it's Sessions and Wray. They're the two guys who can make it happen. Yes, it will be painful. Yes, they may have to take down a lot of people. But sometimes you have to break a few eggs if you want to make an omelet. And we need a super duper omelet with everything in it. Sprinkle with cheese. That's what we need. Fix it, Mr. Wray, Mr. Sessions. It's your obligation. Susan Rice met in a closed session this past Wednesday with House Intel Committee, and she was questioned for 4 hours, including being questioned about her role in the unmasking of Trump team members and associates. Well, it usually takes, these things are generally, you can get the transcripts a lot of the time. They'll be heavily redacted, anything that deals with national security. But I expect that Judicial Watch, probably the ACLJ, various other groups, maybe, various other groups, maybe Trump's attorneys, various people will be doing FOIA requests on these hearings. Despite the fact that they're closed hearings, you can get that information. Just you have a lot of stuff redacted, blacked out. But we should start learning a little bit about what happened. And, of course, we are talking about the Congress, the Intel Committee. Now, they can recommend things to the Department of Justice, but they themselves have no real prosecutorial authority. They can't arrest or charge Susan Rice. All they can do is, have their investigation and at the end of it come out with some sort of a report, which they generally cover up. Now, remember, you have on this particular committee, Nunes is the head of it. Once he stepped aside because of that issue, doesn't mean he's still not involved. He is. He's able to issue subpoenas and everything else. He's still the head of that committee. And Trey Gowdy, I think, is the number 3 man. The Pitbull. Is the number 3 man on that, number 3 Republican on that committee. Well. We just can't seem to go a single day lately without the Rotten Reverend popping up on the radar screen. But I got to cover the stories, right? Well, as you know, the past couple days I've been trying to give the Rotten Reverend some really good advice, which is to shut your mouth and go away. Don't go out and try to embarrass yourself on a 15-city tour trying to pimp your book that no one's going to buy or read. No one cares about. But she apparently thinks people are still care about what happened in 2016. No one does. It's over. But she's still out there. Now, of course, 3 days ago, she comes out and bashes the Bernie bros. Well, that's not a good idea. At the same time, you're trying to unite the party. So my guess is she got someone probably close to her said, hey, try not to do that anymore, because you didn't hear her do it the next day. She comes out the next day and she bashes, an excuse and says that it was sexism that cost her the election. But she finally pushed it too far. The Rotten Reverend has finally gone too far. It appears now that corporate Democrats, big-time donors, are literally sick of her. Many of them have also gotten a copy of that book, and apparently the book trashes Democrats and the Democratic Party very badly, and they are not happy about it. Not at all. So it looks like now they are turning on the Rotten Reverend. Here's the proof. Well, she came out and she got in trouble, I guess, for blaming the Bernie bros. Then they trying to blame sexism. That didn't fly. So she came out yesterday in a relatively short little presser she gave, and she basically blamed women. The Clinton campaign believed going into it that they were going to get around 65% of the women's vote. They just thought women would fall over themselves to go vote for the Rotten Reverend because she had a vagina. But that did not happen. 53% of women voted for Trump. And if anything, this is probably the biggest factor why she lost the Electoral College by such a large margin. It was the women's vote. Obviously there were some surprises in the minority vote, the Hispanic vote, the black vote, and things like that. The inner cities turned out to vote pretty much the way we thought. But when you look at that discrepancy, she was expecting to get 65% of the women's vote, and she got 46, 47%. That's a 20-point gap. A lot of women vote. That was probably the deciding factor. So if you know a woman who voted for Trump, give her a kiss and say thank you. Thank you for giving us President Trump. Because women could have decided that election. In fact, they probably did. And they decided to go with Trump. Alrighty. They say women are smarter than men. Maybe they are. Yeah, that's right. So, anyway, she comes out and blames women. Women didn't vote for me, and that's why I lost. But she took it one step farther, which is what has really kind of pushed it too far for a lot of Democrats. She went off on Biden. Joe Biden has a lot of people in the Democratic Party like Joe Biden. He's an idiot, but a lot of people like him in the Democratic Party. And she basically went after him for some statements that he made when he was critiquing after the election. He was critiquing. He was asked about it, and he was talking about it. He said, well, we lost the Democrats have lost the middle class, the blue-collar America, blue-collar workers for the first time in 40, 50 years. We didn't focus on the working class, Americans. And Trump really did. And that's why he won. Well, Hillary took offense to that, and she's dedicated a chapter in her book to that, and she trashes Biden pretty badly. And she also says that, well, he was out campaigning for me and blah, 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 blah. But, well, so was Bernie. Bernie went out and campaigned for Hillary, endorsed her. Even after she cheated him, he still came out and endorsed her. Everyone did everything they possibly could on the Democratic side. They held their nose, did everything they could to get her elected, and she still got defeated. She still was defeated, in an embarrassing and humiliating fashion. And that's why this is so hard for her to swallow, because it just wasn't a defeat. It was a humiliating, embarrassing defeat. So the Hill got together with some Hillary Clinton donors and some high-level Democrats in the Democratic Party, some people from the DNC, a small room full of people whose names are not being disclosed, but I'm telling you what their titles are. So they're sitting there with two journalists from the Hill who are peppering them with questions about Hillary's book and her book tour and just the election and things in general. And here are some of the comments that were noted by the two journalists at the Hill who were conducting this little interview session with Hillary Clinton donors, DNC hierarchy, and high-level Democrats. One stated, this person here was a former Clinton fundraiser and surrogate, probably someone we've seen on TV. And this person said that he would like to see the failed presidential candidate just shut the F up and go away. Another one of these people, a donor, said that Hillary is being selfish. She's driving a wedge between progressives and the party when the DNC is busy trying to bring the party together. Another one, a former Obama aide, said none of this is good for the party. It's the Hillary show, 100%. Another one of these people said that the Rotten Reverend is score settling while the party is trying to move forward. Still another says the best thing she can do is disappear. And we're getting some leaks, not so much leaks, but releases of some portions of the Reverend Rotten's book. And in this book, she admits that after losing in embarrassing fashion to Trump in 2016, she admits to binging on Chardonnay, burgers and fries, and that her doctor advised her to take Xanax and see a therapist. I don't think she took his advice. I think she should take some cyanide and put us all out of our misery, her misery. Put her out of all of our misery, is what I'm trying to say. It's our misery. But it gets worse. The Chicago Tribune, hometown paper of the Rotten Reverend, wrote a story yesterday. It states, title of the story, Hillary, how can we miss you when you won't go away? Also, in the heavily left-wing, radical left-wing news site Politico, they've got an article, Democrats dread Hillary Rodham Clinton book tour. Yeah, of course they dread it, and she should dread it because it's going to be a disaster. I don't even think she'll get all 15 of these things done. I think they'll cancel these because there'll just be a lack of interest. If you remember, we were watching during the campaign, she couldn't even get, a couple hundred people into a high school gymnasium. They had to bus people in. And these people were getting in for free. Some of them actually, they would buy them lunch at McDonald's and bring them in on buses. The only way to get them there, pay them to hold signs. And she thinks people, you'll find a few limousine liberals and a few whack jobs, who just want to get her autograph or something, who will show up. But you're not going to see overwhelming support for her. And certainly her book is not going to do well at all. I can tell you right now. There's no reason to buy the book. We all know why she lost. To say what happened, we all know what happened. That's like telling us you're going to write a book on how things ended in, some movie that we've all seen a million times. We already know how it ended. There's no need to tell us how it ended and have us pay for it. Certainly not $3,000 a seat to listen to her cry and whine. Probably binging on Chardonnay, burgers and fries. I'll let that go. Something went through my mind. I'm just going to let that go. Alrighty, so that's basically the Rotten Reverend. And I'll tell you, Mr. Chopa made a comment, in the last video, and, talking about there's so many crimes and there's so much evidence of all these crimes. It's, he believes that something has to give, and I agree with Mr. Chopra that, I don't necessarily believe that every single one of the crimes that we talk about here on TowerGate, every one is going to be dealt with, that all the people that we're talking about are going to see justice or anything like that. But I do believe that we are going to see something come out of the hearings that are happening in civil court with Mr. Gubarev and the dossier and GPS and Christopher Steele. I do believe you are going to see a fairly large settlement for Mr. Gubarev. Who's going to be the payee? I don't know. I don't know if it will be GPS or Christopher Steele or both or some other party. But someone is going to be paying Mr. Gubarev. So I think we will see something there. And I do believe that Hillary is going to be indicted for her emails. I mean, there's just overwhelming evidence. Whether or not she gets perp walked and sent to prison for life or whatever, it would have happened to you or I. But I think she will get a much, much softer treatment. She may eventually plead to something. She may eventually settle for a deal when she realizes that she's absolutely going to be prosecuted and found guilty. But I kind of have this feeling that the Clintons, their life, the way it's going to end is that they are going to end up probably dead broke. Because I think that they're going to spend millions and millions of dollars on legal fees. They no longer have the ability to raise or procure money the way they did before. They're in no position of power. All their money is drying up. Their lifestyle is very expensive. We see them selling off assets. Legal fees can really, really mount, and they'll find it very difficult to raise the money. So I would not be surprised that Hillary is charged, that she does what the Clintons typically do, which is drag these things out for years, in which case it will simply bleed her dry. The government has an unlimited amount of money to spend prosecuting her. She does not have an unlimited amount of money. She has a finite amount of money, and the Clintons can no longer generate huge sums of money like they could years earlier when they both had political power. So I think that at the end of the day, probably the punishment that the Clintons will receive is that they may leave this world in debt with their reputations ruined. I think that's probably going to be the punishment. I don't see her going to prison. She should. Maybe that could happen. I don't know. But I do believe we'll see something happen there. And again, it just requires some patience. Remember, in Watergate, the Watergate break-in occurred. There was lots of buzz around it for about a year. Then Richard Nixon wins a 48-state landslide election, the biggest landslide victory in the history of American elections at that time. And then just a year and a half later, 2 attorney generals go to jail. Chief of staff goes to jail. The 5 men who were controlling the fund, the creep, the campaign to re-elect, went to jail. 11 other people went to jail. 22, I think, people in all went to jail. Real prison. And there could have been more, except for, a lot of these guys kept their mouths shut and went to jail. They could have taken more people with them. And of course, the president was forced to resign. And don't forget, he threw the vice president under the bus before he resigned. So you have the president, the vice president, and some of the most powerful Republicans in the government at that time went to prison. And this all happened after Nixon won a 48-state landslide election. Watergate took 3 years to unravel. So, it does become frustrating, but, you just have to be patient. These things, especially when you're talking about criminal investigations, and especially when you're talking about Washington, D.C., all the money these people have, all the influence, and all the lawyers, and all the games and tricks can be played, but eventually the truth will somehow find its way to the surface. So I do believe that Mr. Chopra, as you believe, that there will be some justice, maybe not on everything that we've seen and talk about, and maybe not all the players involved, all those people on Mora's list, but I think that we are going to see some people, particularly in the Fusion GPS, the dossier. I think there'll be some financial repercussions on the civil side. I think that Hillary Clinton could be looking at some criminal liability for sure. I think that Debbie Wasserman Schultz is going to face some criminal issues. I think that very likely we could see something with Samantha Power, Samantha Rice, or Susan Rice, and those people could also. And of course, Comey is not out of the woods, and of course, Brennan. So Be patient. Be patient. That's why we keep following these stories every day. That's why I keep doing these videos. We want to stay on top of it. We don't want to let it slip into the abyss. We want to keep it front and center. Lots of good journalists out there. Trump's pushing it. And we just have to be patient and vigilant. Okay. Senator Candy Pants Lindsey Graham is demanding that Comey testify again. He says he smells a rat. Of course he smells a rat. James Comey tried to pass himself off as a Boy Scout, is not a Boy Scout, I can assure you of that. He's a criminal, and he is a rat. Even Lindsey Graham, Candy Pants Lindsey Graham, butt buddy of Senator Magoo, even he smells a rat. Keep in mind, he is a co-chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he wants Comey to testify about the handling of the email investigation by the dishonorable James Comey. Also, he wants to know why Comey refused the NSA's offering of all those Clinton emails, which we just learned a few days ago, that the NSA came to Comey at one point and said, hey, all them emails you're trying to get, don't worry, we got them. We got them all. We can bring them right over. Who do we send them to? Oh, Comey said he didn't want them. Very interesting. They want to ask the dishonorable Comey about why he refused all those emails while he led the whole country to believe that the FBI was in a vigorous effort to get them, when in fact they weren't interested at all. They were playing us for suckers and fools. Yes, of course Comey needs to be brought in to testify under oath. He's already admitted under oath crimes. I mean, bring him in to testify under Congress? No. They should just go arrest him. You know, bring him into Congress, what? To get him to disclose crimes or something? We're way beyond that. In this particular case, we're way beyond that. No. The dishonorable James Comey should be flat arrested. Charged. No question about it. Guilty of obstruction. And probably a whole list of crimes associated with what he did. Well, black Trump supporters protest Maxine Waters' home congressional office. Now, Maxine Waters is being challenged by a young Democrat. He's I think a Latino, and he's a smart guy. I've listened to him, for a few minutes talk or whatever. He's smart. He's a lot smarter than Maxine Waters. He seems like he's reasonable. He's a lefty, no question about it. But he's certainly nothing like Maxine Waters. I think it's very likely she is one of those Democrats who could be facing defeat. If he gets into a debate with her, he'll cut her to shreds. Because he is intellectually sound. He seems reasonably intelligent. He speaks well. He looks good. He looks honest. He's an honest liberal, I think. Pretty young guy, probably not old enough or haven't been around government long enough to be totally corrupted. So I think he's going to present quite a challenge, but it's very interesting that you're seeing these black supporters surrounding Maxine Waters' congressional office, because this is not something she's used to. This is not something that Maxine Waters is familiar with. Generally, people are afraid to do anything like that to a black female congressman. It's considered politically difficult to do without doing yourself some great public harm. But these these residents in her district, black residents of her district, are fed up with her, sick of her. And I don't even know that they're all Trump supporters. Some of them, I'm sure, were Trump supporters, but could even be Democrats involved in this. I mean, she's got a lot of issues, and I think we all know that. So we'll have to watch that race very closely. Maxine Waters could be out of there. House Intelligence Committee subpoenas Sessions and Wray over the Trump dossier. Trey Gowdy, the pit bull, has used his subpoena power to subpoena witnesses and documents. Now, he's very angry because apparently they have been requesting documents and witnesses, and we know from the story we just talked about back on Tuesday, I think it was, that they're very frustrated even on the Senate. This actually occurred on the Senate side, Senate Judiciary Committee. Grassley and Feinstein very upset because the FBI and Justice Department would not allow these Comey's two right-hand men to testify, and they wouldn't come forward with documents that have been requested. So Feinstein and Grassley are raising all kinds of hell. They sent a letter directly to Sessions. Well, Trey Gowdy and Devin Nunes, and I guess whoever else is on that committee that signed onto it, they didn't even bother just with a letter to Sessions. They flat out sent subpoenas to Sessions and Wray themselves. They are going to call Sessions and Wray on the 14th of September, give it about a week. They're going to call them in and find out why they're blocking these witnesses and documents. So that should be very interesting. It's coming to a head. And of course, we have sources close to the Awan investigation saying that the D.C. Metro Police are closing in on Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz and possible criminal charges. Also, they are likely in the getting caught up in this is possibly the Rotten Reverend herself, along with John Podesta and Donna Brazil. Question is, we're seeing the little fish cutting deals with the government. Question is, will Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz cut a deal herself? Who will she give up to get her neck out the chopping block? Will Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz give up the Clintons? Who will she give up to save her neck? Donna Brazil, John Podesta, the Clintons. Who will Debbie Blabbermouth Wasserman Schultz give up to save her skin? Well, one last thing. Hurricane Irma, last time I looked, as we are Thursday evening, about 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, looks like it's headed for pretty much going to hit Florida, South Florida. Looks like it may hit dead directly frontal attack on Miami and southern Florida. Hopefully it takes a eastern turn to the northeast, and maybe it's just a glancing blow along the coastline. But it looks right now like it's going to be a dead-on shot into Miami, going up through central Florida. So hopefully you all, if you're in that area, you've already evacuated. I know it's a mandatory evacuation for a lot of people in that region. So anyway, my thoughts are with all you folks down there, subscribers and viewers of my videos in that area. I wish you well. Take all the precautions to save your life. I want you to be able to keep watching my videos. We need to watch how this all plays out. You need to be alive to see it. So take care of yourselves. And you guys have a good night. Goodbye.